if you're going to get into this profession or professions like this, you've got to be purpose-driven. The times are going to be tough, and there are going to be times where this isn't fun. There's a lot of times where it is fun, but there's going to be times where it's not fun. And you have to be in it for the long haul, and you have to be prepared to deal with that.
Welcome to the DMF podcast, where you'll find great conversations with interesting people who have been called to serve. We'll meet impactful charities, dive deep into pressing health topics, and learn from servant leaders working to see, be, and spread light. At the end of each episode, we hope you're inspired to realize your own unlimited potential to change the world for the better. Join us as we work to create a region of the healthiest, most purpose-driven people on the planet. Welcome to the DMF Podcast Lead with Light series, hosted by me, Pastor Devlyn Brooks, the CEO of Churches United. In the Lead with Light series, we explore the program's curriculum, talking with vibrant leaders who are demonstrating the very principles we're teaching, and introducing you to a variety of opportunities to take advantage of this dynamic leadership program. In this episode, we visited with Moorhead Police Chief Chris Helmick, who hasn't even been in his position for 6 months yet. Chief Helmick caught my attention this summer when I read a story about him crossing his 100-day mark in his new position. Buried deep in that story about this leader of a small city police department with 60-plus officers and another 20 civilian employees was the nugget that Helmick didn't even become a police officer until he was about 30 years old. And not after he already had tried out possible careers in the military and in business. I was fascinated by this example that you just never know where your career path is going to take you. But as we will find out in the conversation, more importantly, the key is to prepare yourself for whenever that opportunity comes knocking. Let's discover together the winding road that led to Chief Helmick's rise to being the top law officer of the region's second biggest city. Let's dig in. So welcome in, Chief. I'm honored that you've taken the time to come and visit us on the Lead with Light podcast.
Well, thanks for having me in, Pastor Devlyn. It's an honor to be here. I'm happy to come in and have a conversation with you and talk about leadership. That's one of my passions. So ready to get to it.
And this isn't scripted at all, but right when I walked in, in another conversation, I learned you were teaching a leadership class at one point, or involved in a leadership.
Involved? No, actually, I was talking to Evan, and Evan and I were in the FM Fargo Moorhead West Fargo Chamber Leadership Program back in 2020, and we were in the group that was going through that course during COVID. And we were just kind of reconnecting, hadn't seen each other in 5 years, and just getting caught up and talking about that a little bit. But no, it was one of those opportunities that I had in my professional life that I took on, and it was really a rewarding program to go through and learn more about our communities. So this leadership thing's old hat for you. You should be hosting this podcast. Well, I don't know about that, but it is definitely something that I'm passionate about, and I try to find ways to grow that leadership whenever I can.
Well, for those that for some reason, might have just crawled in from the lake and hadn't paid attention in the last 3 months. Who are you, Chief? And where are you? What is your position now?
Well, I am the current Chief of Police of Moorhead, Minnesota, and I took that job on in April of 2025. Prior to that, I spent over 23 years at the Fargo, North Dakota Police Department and rose to the ranks there, and I left that department as a captain. And over the last 4 months now, I've been learning my new position and trying to get acclimated to a new department. Not necessarily a new community. I am a resident of Moorhead, but still learning how the city government works and how the department works. and getting to know the movers and the shakers in the city. And it has been really, it's been a blur, but I've also learned a lot in a very short period of time. And the transition has been great. I've told people I don't think I've had a bad day yet, and I'm having fun. And at this point of the game, I guess if I'm still having fun, and I get it's still new, but I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I'm really happy to be in my new position.
Excellent, wonderful. So in a minute, we're going to back up. We're going to figure out how Chief Helmick got here,
sure,
right? But I'm always fascinated. So, I think we see this in the headlines a lot, right? When there's a new president, that first 100 days, there's always that measurement. And interestingly enough, I have found over my professional life that there is something about that 100-day mark, right? And I don't know if it's psychological, I don't know if it's subconscious, but you kind of just recently crossed that threshold.
Yes.
Talk about that as a leader. What is that experience in that first 100 days?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And yes, I reached that 100-day mark back in late July. And, I didn't really put too much thought into it coming into the position about, okay, this is what I want to accomplish in the first 100 days. But I don't remember exactly how it came to my mind, but I think someone mentioned it, and eventually that evolved into having a conversation about updating the city council about my first 100 days. And that's when I really started to take a look at what had happened. But so with that, I didn't come into the position thinking, okay, I'm going to accomplish this in the first 100 days. It was more of a retrospect. What have I learned in the last 100 days? And I spent the majority of the first 100 days doing one-on-ones with all of our staff. Whether they were sworn officers or civilians. And my intent of doing that was just to get to know all of them, help me remember their names, and also learn more about the department. And I also got to learn about the recent history of the department and some of the challenges that they faced. And that information was much more important than me coming in with an agenda of trying to accomplish certain things in 100 days. And that information really is going to play a key part now when we figure out our strategic plan as we go forward and where we want to take our department and things that haven't worked in the past or things that have been frustrating for our employees in the past. Let's not repeat those mistakes and let's learn from that. And so having all that information, and I just wrapped those up. It took over 100 days to do that, but I just wrapped those up. But that was what the majority of my time was spent doing, as well as, all the in and out things like just learning Minnesota laws and our procedures and all those different things. But so taking a look back at that and then sharing some of that with the council, I felt like that provides some insight on where we were at as a department, what we needed to work on, and kind of gave them a good snapshot of the status of their department.
It sounds like that approach was strategic. That's what you set out to do.
Well, I knew right away I was going to do one-on-ones.
Yep.
That was definitely part of the plan. And I've seen that take place in other formats by other leaders. And, sometimes I think it's a box check that people think, well, I'm coming into this position, I have to do this, so I'm going to do it. But it doesn't get done in a very timely manner. And I don't know if it's truly genuine, but I really wanted to get to know everybody. Being coming into a brand new department, not knowing hardly anybody in that department, and being a little bit older, I don't always remember people's names. So I felt like this is really an opportunity for me to connect with the staff, and so it was strategic from that point. But it was, at least I think, it was just a genuine gesture of I'm doing this because I want to know more about you and I want to know what you have to say. And it wasn't, hey, I'm coming in with an agenda, I'm going to use this or it. So it's strategic at a very basic level, but not manipulative.
You didn't feel any overt pressure then, like you had to make quick decisions in that early period? You felt like you had the room to grow, and
well, that was probably one of my own personal challenges of, I always kind of took pride in being a fixer, whether it's at home or at work.
Guilty.
There's a problem, let's fix it. And, being a new chief and taking on a different type of role, I really had to temper myself that, okay, you can't do that. You can't do that because that's going to cause damage. So make notes, make a task list, tuck that away for a different day. But for right now, we're just gathering intel, and we'll plan the operation later. So that was really that still is a challenge. There are always things that come up. You're thinking, okay, let's find a solution right now, and you have to take a step back and realize, okay, what is the big picture here, and let's focus on what's important right now. We can get back to that at some point, or maybe that's not as important. Maybe we just won't get to that. Yeah.
I had to do a little self-reflection there when you started talking about the self-awareness is important, right?
Yes, absolutely.
100%. I know that I tend to run full tilt at fixing things as well. And I just kind of very quickly in my mind's played, us entering our respective agencies are only about a year apart. Mm-hmm. And my introduction to mine was a little bit different than yours. Mm-hmm. And a year in now, I am finding from my colleagues this push to slow down. And not every decision has to be made right now.
Right.
And because, again, not being an agency that is in crisis any longer,
right.
I think you see this in policing, you see this in human beings in general, right? Mm-hmm. But when you've been in that mode for a certain amount of time, mm-hmm. there is a tendency to stay in that mode, right?
Absolutely.
And so as a leader, you're helping me reflect on the fact that there's a time for action, but there's a season for reflection too.
Absolutely. And we're kind of at that same stage in our own department right now. For the recent years, that department has been short-staffed, which has put a burden on the staff that is there. And they've experienced a lot of stress and tumult because of that. And, while we're still dealing with some of those challenges, I think it's important to point out to our staff that, hey, we are turning a corner here. And that's not because of me. That is not because I'm coming in as the savior here. Mm-hmm. That is not the situation. Some of it's a matter of timing. But for so long, the message has been, oh, it's so tough. It's just so tough. Our staff is just getting beat down. They're just working too hard. Well, that may be, but we also can embrace that too, right? There's some pride in the fact that, hey, you know what? We've made it through this crisis situation, and we're okay. We've took some licks, and we still have some things we need to take care of, but we're okay. And all right, let's push on, and let's get better, and let's grow, whatever we need to do. But let's not dwell on the past and how terrible it was and how much work it was. Let's take pride in what we did and let's move on and tell a new story. So that's kind of something that we're going through right now, and is, our staffing is improving and trying to project out that, hey, you know what, by this point next year, we're going to look really good. Let's look forward to that. And, again, not trying to diminish the current challenges, but things are getting better, and let's put a positive spin on what we're dealing with rather than just what was us.
I love the phrase that you meant, tell a different story. Mm-hmm. That's something that we're practicing in our organization right now, mm-hmm. too, because for a very long time, there was a different story about Churches United, right? And but we are in a different chapter of our organizational history. Yep. We're focusing more on the foundation. We're focusing more on what it is, the core mission of what we used to be. And, we're fundamentally different than we were a year ago. But to your point, that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, I think that's where some organizations get stuck, is that, like you said, they stay in that crisis mode where that becomes their identity. Well, we're never going to get better than that. And that's what happens. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that they don't, and they're just always in crisis mode, and that takes a toll on their team. And it's not a good way to operate.
So maybe we should have done this at the beginning, but just, rapid fire, bullet point. Logistically, tell us a little bit about Moorhead Police Department.
Yeah, well, we have 64 sworn officers. When I say sworn, police officers that people would typically think of that do patrol and investigations. On top of that, we have about 20 civilian staff. My first impressions of coming into the department, initially before I came into the department, I kind of had some false perceptions of the department. But one thing I've been telling folks is, after having been there for a while now, is that it's very underrated. This is a department that does great work. They really do. And it goes unnoticed a lot of times, not just by the community, but by the media, which sometimes is a good thing. Mm-hmm. But, it just gets so lost that we have a lot of officers, really young officers. Most of our officers are 5 years or less in experience. And
I should add, when you compare that to other agencies, is that on average? Is that typical? Is that?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I know, looking at Fargo, a very similar situation.
Okay.
And that's, I don't have any good data to back that up, but at least in the Fargo situation, and Moorhead is in a very similar situation of it just, older staff move on, and younger staff have to fill those holes. And it just kind of depends on the nature of the department, because if you have a lot of senior staff leave in very rapid succession, then yes, you have to bring in a lot of newer officers to fill that void. And that's something that Moorhead had to deal with. So we do have a really young staff, but that's also a great opportunity as well, especially when you're trying to come in and maybe change a culture, improve a culture. And, again, I don't want to sound like I'm manipulating them, but they're moldable. We haven't had a chance to build that yet. And so this is a great opportunity to start fresh and reboot that department a little bit, and build something that they're proud of.
So for listeners who maybe aren't entirely familiar with the core metro area, let's talk about Moorhead a bit. About 40,000 residents?
About 45.
About 45,000 residents. So, and I don't want to put you on the spot. That's not what this is about. But like from a call volume, if you're an average citizen, what does that mean for your department? And what do those calls break out to? And
Well, calls for service roughly are about 30,000 per year. We have 3 different shifts in our department. We've got our day shift, our evening shift, and our night shift. And, we have roughly 8 to 10 officers per shift, and that's split up over the course of a week. So, we have pretty small groups that are working for not a large city, but a good-sized city. But the calls for service have been dropping gradually over the last couple of years. And a lot of that has been because we have been short-staffed, and some of the proactive work that gets lumped into those calls for service has gone down. And in turn, that's been replaced by reactive calls for service. So that's something that, we're hoping to readdress here once we get our staff back up a little bit more, and we can go out and do more proactive things. But anyway, so that's a good sign. Also, the crime rate is relatively good in Moorhead. Recently, we just pulled some stats, and looking at our personal crimes last year, we were down 20%. That's pretty substantial.
What time frame?
The previous year.
Over previous
so for
year.
the end of 2024, our personal crimes against people, was down 20%. Our property crimes were down about 7%. And so that's a really positive sign that we're definitely on the right track there. It's not unusual to see a crime drop of 1 or 2%, somewhere in that single digit, but to have a 20% drop, especially in personal violent crimes, that's something to be proud of. And so we want to keep that trend going. And so, recently one of the questions that came up, did an interview with a media outlet that asked, well, is crime going up in Moorhead? And anytime you have significant incidents like we've had recently, people ask that question. Well, It's getting really bad out there. You hear all the comparisons.
The attention-grabbing crime.
Exactly.
Right? Yep.
You hear all the comparisons of, we're becoming worse than Chicago or worse than Minneapolis, whatever. And, it's just a matter of perspective. But when you really get down and you look at the data, we're a safe community, very safe community. And that is a testament to the police department. Again, we can't take all the credit for that. There's a lot of other community organizations and stakeholders that play a part, and they might not realize they play a part, but they play a part. But the police department is obviously a big piece of that as well. And the fact that the department has been short-staffed and overworked for the last few years, and to have a year like that is something that they should be really proud of.
Can you assign that meaningful change to something specific? 20%, that's a big drop.
It is. I don't have a good answer for you on that. And that's the problem with crime data sometimes is, you can, just like any data, you can tell whatever story you want with that data, right? And, I think it's because of this or that. Well, I can't do that. I wasn't here for it. I don't, and it could just be luck. I hate to say that, but it could be. Human behavior is very unpredictable. And we may have a 20% drop right now, but we might have a 20% rise this year. We don't know. And the best thing we can do as a police department is we just go out and we do our job the best we can. And sometimes the numbers just have to take care of themselves. But it's also trying to keep people from overreacting to high-profile events that make it seem like our community is, as some people say, going down the tubes. It's not. It's really not. And that's because not just Moorhead Police Department, but all the other metro public safety agencies are out there working hard every single day to try to keep a lid on crime the best they can. But, you're just never going to eliminate it, and the numbers can be fleeting. So, it's an impressive number, but we're not going to rest on that.
Sure. So I'm going to make an assumption here that policing a community of 45,000 people here may not be the same as policing a community of 45,000 people, say, in the middle of Minnesota or, in a Mankato or something like that doesn't sit adjacent to this bigger metro area, right?
Absolutely.
Because while you can view the Moorhead Police Department in a vacuum, the world still affects the Moorhead Police Department, right? This has to be a unique factor to what you guys face.
Absolutely. I think our agency is much more comparable to some of the suburbs in the Minneapolis area. There's going to be a lot of those agencies that are similar in size, and the challenges are going to be very similar as well. I don't often think about Moorhead as just being a 45,000 person community. I see us as a good portion of a metropolitan area. And while we're not as big as Fargo, we definitely share the concerns and the challenges and the issues together. And so I think that's important mentality for us to have, is that we are not, like you said, we're not operating in a vacuum here. We are not isolated, and it probably would look a lot different if we were off in central Minnesota by ourselves. but we're not. And so one of the unique things with our area is our local law enforcement agencies work great together. And we rely on each other to provide a lot of services. We have a joint dispatch center, we have joint SWAT team, we have a joint street crimes unit, and those would not be possible by ourselves. There is no way that Moorhead PD could have its own SWAT team.
Well, just in the last 2 to 3 weeks, there's been demonstrable instances where the various departments have backed each other up.
Absolutely.
Right? High-profile incidents where West Fargo helped Fargo, Fargo has helped Moorhead PD.
Yep.
I mean, it demonstrated that level of collaboration that you all have.
Absolutely, and it's just essential. And I think, again, because of that, we don't and we can't see ourselves as operating in a silo. We have to have those strong relationships. And so it's one of my priorities to make sure that I work well with the sheriffs, with Chief Cebulski in Fargo, Chief Nielsen over in West Fargo, the federal agencies, the state agencies, whoever it is, we're working together on this. And at any point, if we think that we can just go it alone, we're in trouble. And so that has got to be a high priority for our department in making sure we maintain those strong relationships. And we're going to have our disagreements. You never get a bunch of head honchos together and not have disagreements. But, at the end of the day, we still get along really well. And at the line level, too, those officers and deputies work really well together. And it is just essential if we're going to really be successful in this area to lower crime. And you're going to see crime is going down in those communities as well. Again, it's a joint effort. And what I do or what those agencies do, that has an impact on the whole community.
So if it's okay, let's hold it here for a minute. And we'll get back to your history, I promise.
Sure.
But I think we kind of have found I think the conversation found our way here. But it's no surprise that if you've been in our community in recent weeks, policing has been in the headlines. For various reasons, for high-profile incidents, how we respond to those. You had to make a conscious decision to apply to be chief of Moorhead Police, right?
I did.
Talk to me about that decision-making process, because you weren't ignorant to the fact that these types of situations can arise.
Right.
So,
well, that's a really good question, and we don't to take up all our time on this one, but I'll go into a little bit. But professionally speaking, like I said, I'd been with Fargo for over 20 years. Rose up through the ranks and was currently a captain before I left there. And when you've done this job for that length of time, you do start to you're looking in the rearview mirror a little bit. And you're also looking towards the big R, retirement. And, I don't consider myself retirement age, but I was recognizing, okay, where are you going with your career? You're a captain now. Just for reference, in the Fargo department, after captain, there's an assistant chief and then there's chief. Now, I had applied for chief back in 2020 before Chief Cebulski came in, and I was a lieutenant at the time, and I naively thought that I could become the chief of that department. And in hindsight, that was, like I said, naive. It was well-intentioned. I really wanted the best for that department, but looking back now, it would have been a disaster. And things happen for a reason. Anyway, so, looking at the current state of affairs before I became chief in Moorhead, it really was a situation of where are you going with your career and what do you want to do next? Is it hang in there and maybe become assistant chief? Is it maybe applying for the chief position if and when that opens up? Or moving on to a different profession? And, what are you going to do? And it just kind of became a constant nagging question of what is that next step in life? So, when the Moorhead position opened up, initially people would ask me, are you going to apply for this? That always happens anytime a chief position opens, the rumors start flying and people start to speculate. And I would tell people, absolutely not. There's no way I'm applying for that. And I mentioned earlier that I had some perceptions of the Moorhead Police Department, and I didn't really know anybody over there, and it just felt like, no, I don't want to do that. I've worked in Fargo. I'm proud of being in Fargo, and I'm not interested in Moorhead. But then as this nagging question continued in my mind, it just felt like, okay, hang on a second here. Let me take another look at this. So, they had a profile for the position. I read through what the city was looking for, and it's like, okay, I can check this box. I can check this box. I can check this box. One of the barriers that I always saw of being a chief is a lot of departments require a master's degree, and I don't have a master's degree. Well, something that caught my attention was Moorhead wasn't requiring a master's degree. They didn't even mention it. Well, what they did mention was, hey, you had to be a graduate of a leadership course like the FBI National Academy or something along that lines, and I could check that box. And I started to look at this, and I thought, hey, you know what? First of all, I can check these boxes, but also I like what they're looking for here. I think I could do this. And so I went to my wife. I said, hey, what do you think? And she's like, absolutely, you should do it. I was like, well, okay, well, there we go. I guess we're doing this. And that's such a key piece of a big decision like that. Okay, this is, and we talked it over, and I talked it over with my kids as well, is that, hey, you know what? We're going to be more visible. We have a unique last name in this community, and this is something that people are going to start putting two and two together, and are we ready for that? Because there's definitely a level of anonymity of being a captain in a police department versus the chief. Everyone assured me they were fine with that. I don't think they really understood what they were getting into, but okay. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm putting it in, and it just made sense on a lot of different levels. And it's like, okay, this was what I was looking for, and it just grew from there. That this is it. This is the mission. So, sorry, I get a little emotional when I talk about that, but
family support is crucial.
Yeah,
absolutely crucial.
Anyway. So, yeah, well, anytime you apply for a position like that, it's stressful because you're thinking about the what ifs, but you're also trying to go through your day to day. Okay, I got to focus on this job. And then you also have that nagging doubt in your mind too, that, okay, well, who else is going to apply for this? And how am I going to stack up against these folks? And they're not going to pick me.
Yeah. And,
but anyway, I pushed through, went through the process, and I was something else that really drew me was the fact that I didn't have to relocate. I already lived in Moorhead, and again, just all these signals were telling me this is right. So going through the process, I met the other folks that were applying, and I thought, oh boy, I don't know, they're pretty impressive. And
wait a second, like this was Survivor? They put you on an island and you all had to meet each other?
Well, so during the selection process, there were a couple of events that took place. One of the events is a meet and greet with members of the community. And during that, we all were present, and we all had a chance to visit with small groups and kind of give our spiel. And then on top of that, we had to do the same thing for internal, the employees. And, again, hearing, and we're cops, so kind of caught wind of who was going to apply. So I'd do some Google searching and what's this person done and what are they bringing to the table? And
I just have this picture of this Midwestern nice. 3 of you, 5 of you?
There was 4 total.
4 of you sitting in a room trying to not throw each other under the bus, but yet, be the better show horse. Like,
yeah.
This had to be like high comedy.
Well, it's a very unique situation, and it's so different than most job applications, but it's also an important piece of becoming a police chief is that the public has to see you, and the employees have to see you, and they had a say in that as well. And they would fill out surveys, and I don't have any idea what they said. I don't think I want to know what they said.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there was some positives, some negatives, and that was part of the process. So, having gone through this before, when I applied for the Fargo chief position, I kind of had a strategy. And that experience came into play. And I don't think that any of the other folks had ever applied for a chief position before, so I felt like I got a leg up here. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I did when it was time to give our spiel was I knew what was going to happen, is most people are going to go up there and going to go, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do this differently. And I'm going to make an impression. So what I did is I came and I talked about my vision for the department and what I saw of the department, of the community. And I just talked a lot less about me and more about what I wanted to accomplish and where I saw taking the community in the department. And I was pretty proud of that. And whether or not it had an impact, I don't know. But I felt like, you know what, I'm doing it differently. And I think, in my mind anyway, I felt like that maybe set the pace for me, that I'm setting myself aside from the other applicants and making myself stand out. And then when I actually did the panel interview, I again, much like in this interview, I got emotional about things that, why is he getting so emotional about that? I talked about leadership things and things that mattered. And I think I struck a nerve, at least talking to the mayor later, that there's a connection there that, oh, wow, you're so passionate about this. He's got to be the guy for us. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think if I was to sit down and give a seminar on how to apply and achieve the position of chief, I'm pretty sure that you would not see any of these tactics in the manual.
I just envisioned every police captain in the metro area just furiously scribbling notes right now.
Well, I don't know. And again, I don't know if it would work in every situation, but it worked for me. And, I knew when the panel interview, they finished early. I think it was the mayor that said, I don't think we need to go through any more of these questions. And I thought, okay, well, that's either really good sign.
There's no middle ground there, Chief.
No, there's not. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take that as a positive, but I don't know for sure. So again, that self-doubt creeps in your mind. Mm-hmm. But when I got the phone call, I knew at that point. And just from there, everything just fell into place. Yeah. And it's so hard to explain, and I'm sure other people have experienced this, but I always tell people, if you don't know what's right, your gut's going to tell you. It's going to feel like you're trying to put that square peg in the round hole, and it just isn't working, but you're going to keep trying, right? Because you're stubborn, you're determined, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it just doesn't fit right. This was different. It was like the stars were aligning.
If you haven't already, head to BeLight.org to sign up for the monthly Lead with Light newsletter. While you're there, you can also find past editions on the Lead with Light blog and register for upcoming trainings. Also, be on the lookout for the official Lead with Light book, which will be released later this year. I don't know if you've experienced this in the last 4 months, but over the last year, when for necessary purposes, my face has been everywhere. Do your kids refuse to go in public with you now?
They don't.
Oh, mine do. Mine do, because they don't want to be caught up with every conversation I get stopped at.
I think that I'm still enjoying some anonymity.
Okay.
And I'll tell you a little bit of a story on this too. A secret be told here, I'm an introvert. And when I'm not at work, I like to stick to myself. And that's, you're thinking, well, that's completely counter to being the police chief. But, I like my privacy, and I like to just separate. And so my kids are involved in a lot of activities. And so I go to kids' activities, kids' sports through the summer. And, I go to the games, and I'm always worried about people recognizing me. So I kind of sit off to the side and wear my baseball cap and my sunglasses, hoping people don't notice.
Fantastic. Like, you fold up your collar too.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, don't look at anybody. They won't recognize you. And so go through most of the summer, and I went to one of my son's baseball games. I was one of the first people there. And so I'm going over. He's going out to warm up, and I'm setting up my lawn chair and getting situated. And the coach comes over. And I hadn't talked to the coach at all this. I tried to let him do his thing, I hadn't talked to the coach at all. I didn't know he even knew who I was. But he came over and he goes, well, you guys had a rough couple of weeks. I was like, oh, yeah, and so we chatted about that a little bit. And I mentioned to my wife later, I said, yeah, and I told her the story, and I said, I think maybe people know who I am. And she's like, yeah, they're just pretending not to know who you are. They're intimidated to approach you or what have you. And so that was kind of the eye opener of, hey, I might not think that people know who I am, but they probably do. And so I have to get more comfortable, I think, with trying to be more approachable in those situations too. And that's still a learning point for me.
It is different. You had mentioned something earlier, the feeling of being a captain, which you can kind of go about your life
Absolutely.
in a fairly anonymous way. You're one person in a large department, right?
Absolutely.
To this role now and adopting this new persona of this public person, right? And it's fascinating to me to hear you talk about being an introvert, because we are kindred spirits in that sense. And whenever I share that with folks, they're surprised, right? I mean, first of all, having spent 30 years in the media and then being a pastor, they wonder how you do that. And for me, it's a learned skill of flicking the light switch on and off.
Absolutely.
And that's how 100%. I describe it. That hour that I'm in the pulpit, I'm on. And then when I'm out of that, the rest of Sunday afternoon, I'm a mess, right? So this learning curve of mine of being a public persona over the past year has been interesting. And to your point, like, I will catch Shelley, my spouse, telling me at times, you can't go to the store in that. Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Like, and so to your point, I don't think of this larger role now from a community leadership standpoint, but you have to now.
Yes, and I think it's good for people to understand that just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't be a public leader like that. Yeah. It's just you learn to balance it, right? I mean, you can't be completely withdrawn because that'll get you into trouble. But you're right. I think you touched on it, and I see it the same way. It's like being a performer at some level of, okay, I'm on stage.
Very much so.
And I'm not acting, but I can flip that switch. But when I'm off the stage, I have to recharge. And I sometimes will comment to my wife when I come home that I really burned out the batteries today. There'll be those days it just takes it out of you. And I know that extroverts probably are the other way. They energize from having those interactions. And but again, you can that self-analysis becomes important, and you can work through those things, and you just, there's always room for improvement. There's ways to do that, but it is a challenge. But it's also, being a police officer is unique because even though people don't know your name, every time you walk into a place in uniform, it's like being a celebrity. You have the people that just drop everything and they'll watch you. They'll make the weird comments. They will come over and want a sticker, if they're kids, or just to say hi, whatever. And so, again, it's one of those things that especially newer officers have a tough time with, that you are a public figure when you walk in, and people see that.
And you represent something larger.
Absolutely. And so you have to learn to embrace that. And not every officer is good at that. Some will avoid those situations. Some will not go to a restaurant and eat in public in uniform because they just don't want to deal with that. But that comes with the job, and you have to take those opportunities to interact with the public in a positive way. Because guess what? If you don't, just like a celebrity, if you go up to a celebrity and ask for an autograph and they tell you to take a hike, well, guess what? You're no longer the biggest fan. It's the same with police officers. So you take that moment and you leave a positive impression with folks. As a chief, it's the same. It's just magnified because now you represent not only the profession, but your department and your community. And people are depending on you to be a good role model and a good leader. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in that position. And you have to get comfortable with that role. And that's still a learning point for me.
You bring up, I think, a very interesting question in my mind. You have enough history as being a police officer so that you have some context in this. Mm-hmm. Do you feel a greater weight nowadays about representing what the role of a police officer is for good because of maybe just current events in the past 5 years, 10 years, just a shift in culture? Maybe this is unfair, but I sense that at the beginning of your career, maybe there was a more obligatory respect for the position of police officer than what has happened over time. Or
well, that's a really interesting question, and I'm not sure if I have a good answer for that. But I'll just tell you my personal experience is that okay. So I came into the profession shortly after 9/11, and that was one of the high points for the profession. Everyone loved police and firefighters at that point, and military too, because the Gulf War was starting, and it just, that's when you started to see people just come over and say, hey, thank you for your service, and just that I don't know the right term to say, but just, we're going to give you the respect just because of the uniform that you wear. So then you fast forward to Ferguson, the incident in Ferguson, Missouri. And I don't remember all the names involved, but that was one of the low points. Now the tables had turned. We rode that, and there were other incidents that happened around that same time too, that just became the narrative that police are bad and these things are happening and they're all doing this. And again, it really unfair to the 99% of officers that go out and do the right thing all the time. And, so we saw that cycle again where people were leaving. People are saying, hey, the heck with this. I don't want to be part of this. And, you still had the people out there that, hey, we don't care. We still respect and we still are proud of the police officers. But, you just had that national narrative that really became a challenge. So then that started to fade away a little bit and things kind of stabilized. Then in 2020, we have George Floyd. And that was, it almost was like a continuation. It was like it happened after Ferguson, quieted down a little bit, but was still simmering. And then George Floyd just exploded the situation. And then it became much more difficult because not only is it a national thing, but we're seeing the effects locally too. This is not just isolated to Minneapolis. This is everywhere. And it was like everything was just coming undone. And so, again, some of us had kind of been down this road before, but not to this level. And we obviously saw things locally that we never thought we'd see. And, there was a lot of folks that decided, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to, the heck with it. I'm not going to do this. And, of course, you have people that say, I don't even want to come into this profession. And, then you have the rest of us that are somewhere in between probably. Right? Why am I doing this? If this is the reaction when we go out and do things right and we can't do anything right, why are we doing this? And what's the purpose of this? And so you have to fight through that. And I think the vast majority of officers did fight through that and stuck with it. And now where we're at is I think it's getting better, but I don't know because you look at the situation with immigration and ICE and the fear of that, and police get lumped in with that and think that they're working in conjunction. And I think it's just the nature of our profession now that there are always going to be those challenges. I don't think there's ever going to be a period anymore where people are just, yep, it's the police. We love them regardless of what they do. And God bless America.
Yeah. That's fair.
But that's also something that has to be recognized by departments like ours, that you can't just rely on people having that ingrained respect. You have to go out and earn it. And that's earned not only through those very visible things like having special events or engaging with the public, but also just go out and do your job and do it right and be transparent and share what you're doing. And that's one of the challenges that we're finding with the Moorhead Police Department right now is we haven't been doing a good job of telling our story, showing the public what we're doing, the successes that we have, the fact that crime is down and that we have a safe community. All those things that the public ultimately expects from their police department. They want to know what their police department's doing, and they want to they want to honor the police department. I truly think that the majority of the people out there, they respect the police. They want to be proud of their police department, but they still want to know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They want to know what's going on, and they want to know who they are. And so that's something that we have to do, and that in turn is also something I think helps draw people to the department that want to work there, is that if they see that, hey, you know what, this department is going out, they're doing the job, they're having success, here's their culture, it looks like they're having some fun there, it looks like they got young people that work there. I'm a young person, I'd like to work there. No one wants to work, if they're 20 years old, they don't want to work with a bunch of 50-year-olds. Right. And so again, it's all tied together, but I truly believe, at least in our area, the vast majority of people still respect their police officers, and they'll stand behind us. We just have to show them a little bit better what we're doing.
Yeah. So is it safe to say that you believe there's a future in policing, like young people still are gravitating to it?
Yeah, I do. And it might look different.
That's good to hear.
Well, I get a little frustrated when people say, well, I've never tell my kids to go into this profession. Well, then what does that say about your profession?
Yeah.
Or your career? Was it a waste? I don't want to think that it was a waste. Was it challenging? Absolutely. But I think most of us got into this profession because we were looking for a challenge. We were looking to help people. And if we thought it was going to be easy, I don't know what you were watching. So it's not an easy profession.
I'm going to blow up a big poster of you in a blue and red, white, and blue top hat, pointing at like you get to be the face for all of our professions that maybe are unsung, that you're not going to make a lot of money at. Yep. That are going to be challenging and tough and really truly serving sometimes people in hard times in their lives. Mm-hmm. Make a pitch for it, Chief, because we need more of them.
Absolutely, and that's the thing is it comes down to purpose, and people get into professions for all kinds of different reasons, right? Some are driven by money, some are driven by popularity, whatever it is, and not passing any judgment on any of those reasons. But if you're going to get into this profession or professions like this, you've got to be purpose driven. The times are going to be tough, and there are going to be times where this isn't fun. There's a lot of times where it is fun, but there's going to be times where it's not fun.
Amen, brother.
And you have to be in it for the long haul, and you have to be prepared to deal with that. And that's why right now, too, we really have a focus on mental health and making sure people understand that this will have an effect on you. You will not be the same person when you enter the doors and when you leave the doors. You will not. I think that's impossible. But it's making sure that when you come in the door, we do the best we can to take good care of you through this tough career. You have a long and successful career, and then you get to retire happy. We hope. So that's the reality of this profession. It's so much different than it was when I started, but it has to evolve. It's a tough gig. And when we talk about all these things that are going on that we can't control, okay, then what can we control and what can we do to make sure that people are still drawn to this? I think they still are. They maybe are a little intimidated because they don't know what they're getting into, but okay, let's get them in the door and let's develop that. But once we do that, let's take good care of them while they're here and make sure we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And we don't let trauma build up. We don't let people retire in bad health and they lose their retirement. And so that's changing. I think that's an expectation too, that people are coming in that they don't want to leave damaged goods.
Yeah.
They want to contribute. And I truly do that. I mean, I look at our team, they want to contribute. Some people, unfortunately, they get into this, they maybe apply a department and they think, well, I want to work here because they don't do anything. It's really quiet here. No, the people that work for us, they came here for a reason. They didn't come here to slack off. They came here to work. And so because of that, okay, we want your contribution, but let's take good care of you and make sure that you have the ability to retire at some point and enjoy the fruits of your labor.
And I think it's fair that we can apply that across a lot of
absolutely
service positions, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think even back 5 years ago when there was this awareness maybe of some of the, whether it was police and fire and EMT, but, we have our oldest son is an RN and he's worked in Twin Cities ER.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about some folks that are unsung,
yep.
Nurses and the medical teams. And, we talk about our teaching staffs who are
Absolutely.
battered from every side,
Yep.
in this day and age. And there are a number of service-oriented professions that they need spokespeople.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's just it. It sometimes gets a little uncomfortable because all the attention is on police or public safety, but there are a lot of unsung heroes out there, like you're talking about, that they don't get the recognition, but they rely on people that are purpose-driven
Yeah.
to do those jobs, and they aren't driven by the money or the fame. They're driven by, I want to make a difference. And I think those people will always be there. And, I think what obviously helps is, well, let's make sure we can compensate appropriately, and that never hurts.
So one of the privileges I get as CEO at Churches United is that after on the first day when a new employee comes through, and as part of that first day training piece, I get 30 minutes with them just to sit down and say, hey, here's really kind of our cultural foundation. And one of the things I tell them every time is, you're going to work really hard and it's going to be really difficult at times. Yep. But at the end of the day, you get to go home and think, I played a part in helping 500 people today.
Absolutely.
That makes up for a lot.
Yep.
That makes up for a lot.
It does. And sometimes it gets lost, right? One of the things I always like to, when I send out department-wide communications, I always like to put in there, your work matters. Because that gets lost, when you're doing the routine stuff, yeah. And stuff like, I don't want to do this today. It gets lost that, am I really making a difference? And those small things do matter. No matter what it is, the fact that you showed up and you contributed at whatever level, you made a difference. And that should never get overlooked.
So we could go for a very long time. Very long time. I mentioned to you off air previously, my dad was a career policeman, 20 years. And so I'm a big supporter, and I love the profession. But being that this is a leadership podcast, one of the things, and I shared this with you, that fascinated me about your journey, and I think this would be applicable to a lot of people, that I think one of the things that our society does is that we push people very young to know what their future is, what their path is, right? But in reading your story, you weren't necessarily that fourth grader that wrote the report about, I want to be a police officer when I grow up.
No, not necessarily. I remember being a kid and, I went through the same stage as everybody else, that I want to be a police officer, I want to be a firefighter. Changes day by day, it seems like. But I never felt like, oh, that's the career goal. It wasn't like a lifelong thing. I went through a lot of different stages. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be an NFL quarterback. I wanted to be an archaeologist at one point. And, as I went through high school, I really became focused on going into the military. I was really focused on going into the Air Force, and I actually applied for the U.S. Air Force Academy. Actually got selected or nominated to the Academy by Senator Dorgan at the time.
That's impressive.
Well, I was proud of that. I wasn't a solid candidate, but the fact that I even got considered was, I thought, an honor. But wasn't able to go. My hearing wasn't good enough, and so I got washed out of that. And so I thought, well, okay, what are stages am I going to? What can I do? Really want to be an officer. I don't want to just enlist. I want to be an officer. And so I went to NDSU, enrolled in ROTC there, and then transferred over to Moorhead State. Went through 3 years of that, and I was challenged by the physical fitness part of it. And again, looking back, I was so dumb. The foolishness of youth sometimes, and just you could have did this. It wasn't that hard. You could have overcome this. It wasn't like I was totally out of shape. It just wasn't putting the effort into it. And long story short, I got washed out. At some point between your sophomore and junior year, you have to go away to a summer camp, and you got to meet the physical fitness standards for that camp. And I didn't. First day I was there, I don't know if it was the first day, but within the first couple of days there, I took the physical fitness test, didn't pass. And they said, okay, you get one more shot. And they ran me through it. I didn't make it. So here I am in Texas. I was supposed to be here for 4 weeks. I'm 2 days into this. They're packing me up on a plane and sending me home. And that's it. It's done. It's like, okay, well, now what the heck do I do? So I had to go back and face my commanding officer, and they're like, well, you can maybe try it again next summer if you want. But going back to our previous conversation of your gut tells you when you know it's not right. And it was one of those things like, you know what? I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the leadership aspect of it. I was driven by this for 3, 4, 5 years. Okay, now what do I do? But it felt like, no, I think I've done this piece. I've learned what I need to learn from this, but I'm moving on. But I don't know what that next step is. So, I kind of bounced around at that point. I worked retail. I finished school. It took me a while to finish school because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But then I started to zero in on the law enforcement aspect of it, of kind of circling back to, well, you know what, younger, maybe that is something I want to do. But again, the foolishness of youth, about the path to getting there. It's like, nowadays you'd do some ride-alongs, you would maybe talk to some people. For whatever reason, I didn't do it that way. Again, if I was to write a book, you would not want to follow my path. So again, I had no idea what I was doing. I was also so stubborn and lacking in emotional intelligence to ask for help or reach out to someone. Hey, how do I do this? What should I do to prep? It was just, I'm going to do it my own, and I'm going to just figure this out. And I was so fixated on getting hired with Fargo. I had applied for other departments, but nothing was panning out. And so in the meantime, I'm working retail jobs. I'm not happy with any of those. Just trying to find my way. I think I know my way, but I don't know how to get there. So I'm just, it's like a mouse trying to get through the maze, and just didn't know what the heck he was doing. So, fast forwarding, I was working for a retailer, and, it wasn't my dream job by any means, but I got into leadership positions, and I became a manager there. And, I could tell I was starting to grow a little bit, maturing a little bit, starting to get over yourself a little bit. And, I got a taste of leadership being in ROTC, But now I was getting a different type of leadership that, okay, I'm being a real leader here. I'm actually leading people. And, I didn't really recognize it at the time, but I saw that, okay, I've learned a lot from bad leaders. I've probably learned a lot more from bad leaders than I have from good leaders. And I was just doing it differently. I was doing it different than what other leaders had done. And that seemed to get a good response from the people that I was managing. But it took a grind on me. And it affected my health, and it was a lot of stress, and I just didn't know how to deal with that. But in the meantime, I found an inroad to Fargo PD. And again, it was one of these situations where, okay, I'm going to do this. I don't think I'm ready to do this, but I'm going to do this because it feels right. And I was really worried about the physical fitness part, because having gone through that again, I don't want to fail this time. And so I was a little bit more prepared. But I knew that was the big barrier, because we had to take a physical fitness test, and we did this. I barely passed. And the biggest thing was that, I wasn't the most flexible person. One of the things they had to do is a sit and reach test. And I thought, I don't know if I can do this one, because I've been doing it at home, and I just really struggle with this. But I went and I took that test, and I still remember, he wasn't chief at that point, but Dave Todd was one of the guys, and he was making sure that I followed the rules of that test. And I think I had to do it all 3 times, 3 attempts to get it, but I got it. Okay, I'm in now. I passed the biggest part. I can do this. And everything unfolded at that point, and got through the interviews, got hired. Like, wow, okay, this is going to happen. And so I left my other job, and I was happy to do that. It was sad to leave the people there, because I'd learned a lot from them, and I actually grew to kind of like that job. But this was what I wanted to do. But I also told myself when I took this job, I will never lead people again. I will never manage people again. I don't want to do that. I burned myself out. Like I said, I had some health issues that came from that, and it was just really stressful. And I just felt like, I just want to be a police officer. I'm just going to go do my job. I'm not going to be a manager of people. Just not going to do it. And
well, you were really good at that.
Well, it's again, it was one of those moments in your life where I think I was about 8 years into it, and I remember sitting in my patrol car just thinking, another one of those routine calls comes out of someone is reporting a theft, or just one of those things that happens all the time, and you're taking so many reports of this, and it just kind of gets annoying at some point. And I just remember telling myself, I cannot take another report like this anymore. I can't. I've had my fill. And so I started to look again for that next opportunity. And I applied to be an investigator, I think 3 times. I put my name in, and each time I withdrew. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. I like being patrol. Just looking for that right opportunity. Well, the opportunity came to test for sergeant. And mostly I was driven by, I don't want to work for that person.
Which is fair.
Well, it happens, right? And so again, it wasn't something I set out to do, but I thought the more I looked at this and the more invested I got into the process, I thought, I'm doing this. I can do this. I can do this. And it took a couple of attempts. I was never the number 1 draft pick, but I got in at some point. I got promoted to sergeant. And I really enjoyed it. I made a lot of mistakes. And actually, I've crossed paths with some people that I could have handled a lot better. But again, I was in my 30s at that point, but I was still pretty immature. And again, I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I had a lot of responsibility. But then the lieutenant position came up, and the same thing. I'm not working for that person, and I'm ready for this. So threw my hat in the ring again. Again, it wasn't the number 1 pick, but stuck with it and got promoted. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that even more than being sergeant, because I had a real connection with my shift. And that was through the loss of Officer Mosier. We kind of connected. But it was like a fuel that, hey, you know what? I am making a difference here, and I can do this, and I'm benefiting the department, and I really enjoy this. And so again, captain came up. That whole story is a little bit different. I won't get into all the details of that one, but again, I was ready for that next challenge. But that kind of brings me back full circle to how I ended up becoming chief, is that it's just these series of events of, where am I going? Not having a clear path of someday, some people say, I'm going to be chief of police someday. That was not me. It was just, okay, I'm at this stage. The voice is telling me, where are we going with this? And then trying to zero in on that path. And then once you're locked on, okay, let's go down that path and see what happens. So here we are.
There's a lot of leadership points in there that I think just in a narrative form that you elicited. But so when you finally got into Fargo PD, how old would you have been?
I was 30.
You were 30 years old.
Yeah.
Which I think is a remarkable story for a lot of people who might be out there in this world that tells them that they have to know what they're doing at 18 or 20 or 22 years old
right.
when you're coming out of college. And I think there is such pressure
yes.
on young people today
yes.
that they can't figure out who they are, that there's this, and that's why your story, I think, is so special. And I love to lift up the fact that, you were 30 when you found the thing that made you buzz, right?
Yeah. And that's just it. A couple things with that. One is looking back, and I look at some of these young officers that come in, they're 20, 21, 22, and I'm thinking, I never could have done this job at that age. God bless them.
Yeah.
I would have been a failure because I was just too ignorant, too immature, a lot of different things. But to your other point is you're 100% right. And if my kids came to me and said, hey, Dad, I want to take a year or two off and kind of figure things out, 100% go do that. You should do that. Make your way. Figure it out. Because I think a lot of us fell into that same mentality of, okay, this is the roadmap you're supposed to go on. You go to high school, you go to college, you get a degree, you get a job, you put in how many years, and there you go. But how many people do that and are truly energized by what they do, truly enjoy it? And, it doesn't mean you can't change, but that's an old way of thinking. And I think that it's really important for young people now to understand that you don't have to have it all figured out. In fact, it's going to change at some point. You might go down a path and, again, maybe getting that gnawing feeling that this isn't right. It doesn't feel right. And I'm going to go do this instead. Go do it. Life is short, right?
Yeah.
And you got to listen to your gut.
I love hearing you talk about the difference of what 30-year-old officer Helmick would be to 20. I tell people all the time that, I had this tug to go to seminary in my early 20s. And then life happened. And I didn't end up going until I was 42 years old. But I will tell you right now that I am a supremely better pastor at 42. Absolutely. And because of the curveballs that life threw at me, I would have been a terrible pastor at 22 years old when I first got that tickle. And so I love hearing you say that.
No, everything happens for a reason. It really does. And, I always tell people, you may not know what the reason is at the time. You go through bad things or challenges or setbacks or whatever, and you go, oh, woe is me. And I have this conversation a lot of time with officers that I didn't get the promotion I wanted, or I didn't get this position or whatever. Okay, this will make sense at some point. You just have to trust me, but it'll make sense. And then when you get down the road and you look back and you go, that's why I didn't get that. It wasn't the right fit. I wasn't ready for it. I was lacking something, whatever it is, but it will make sense if you really reflect back on that. And so it's again, you those things that you learned in that gap that make you better when the time comes. And there was a reason that, hey, you didn't get to do it in your early 20s, but look at what you were able to bring to the table when you get there at 42. It would have been a totally different outcome.
Chief, we could go on for a very long time. I just, Your sincerity, your genuineness, your openness, I applaud you. Wish you the best of luck. So we have a tradition here that you're aware with the Lead with Light, the LIGHT is an acronym, right? So we like to finish. I'm just going to, don't give you time to think about this.
Okay.
So I'm going to just pick a couple of the letters.
Okay.
And then for what they stand for in light. And then I just want your, gut reaction to that from a leader. And you don't even think about it.
Okay.
So, I think so in the Lead with Light acronym, I is instilling purpose and meaning in all we do. You touched upon that so much in our conversation today. Why is that important?
Again, you have to know your purpose, why you're doing what you're doing, and what's the purpose of this. And then also recognize that you have an impact. Even if you think you're doing something that's insignificant, you have an impact.
H, I heard you talk about this, especially for your team. In the Lead with Light acronym, H is honoring health, mind, body, and spirit. Talk about why that's so important to you and your team.
You got to take care of yourself. As we talked about, this is a hard profession, and you have to take steps to take good care of yourself. And we don't want this to be the final chapter of your story. We want this to be a successful career, and you're going to achieve what we all kind of strive for, that happy retirement. And you can't do that if you're not healthy and taking good care of yourself along the way.
I'm going to finish with G because this is really important to me, in my faith work, in the writing that I do. And I think it's key to our faith. I think it's key to, mental wellness. But the G stands for galvanizing gratitude. I hear so much gratitude in when you talk. Talk to me about why that's important to you.
Well, it's an important thing that I try to convey to all of our officers that, hey, I appreciate what you do. And again, it goes back to you have a purpose, you're making a difference, but on top of that, I appreciate what you do. And that's what people want to hear, right?
Changes people's lives, doesn't it? Chief, thank you so much. I'm grateful, and we're going to have to do this again down the road.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the opportunity, and it was quite the journey.
Well, to you and your officers, stay safe, and we're lucky to have you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Moorhead Police Chief Chris Helmick doesn't profess a bravado that you might assign to the top law enforcement officer of a police department of about 80 people. Helmick enters a room quietly, more comfortable in a behind-the-scenes position than he is with stealing the spotlight. But get this kind and introspective officer behind a microphone and clear away all of the noise, and you'll find a deeply passionate servant leader. If stereotypes of what a police chief should be still exist, then I would think that Chief Helmick defies them. While admittedly, Chief Helmick admits to possessing a fixer leadership style, in his new role, taking over a police department in the midst of a rebuild, the chief found it necessary to be a listener first, so that he and the department could take a step back from their current circumstances and look at the big picture. Now, just more than 100 days into his tenure, the chief is ready to help his department create a new narrative, as he says. He's ready to help his team look beyond its past struggles to a new chapter in which they embrace their challenges. He says it's important that they learn how to tell a different story. As a leader who took over as CEO of a large nonprofit that includes an emergency shelter, supportive housing apartments, and a standalone food pantry, this was a familiar scenario to me. Our agency, too, had to learn how to look beyond the past so that we could have a better future. Helmick's lesson is a great one for all leaders to hear. Also, I respect leaders who are willing to be an open book. because it's easy and tempting to hide behind the expectations of the never let them see you sweat crowd. But Chief Helmick was unafraid to show his passion about his leadership, about his team, and about serving the public. He willingly shows his emotions and gives you a good glimpse at what the city leaders saw in him when they tapped him for the police department's top job. Lastly, I appreciated the chief's discussion about the need for people seeking to get into public service roles to be purpose-driven in their lives. I've had a front row seat for the past year to see who works out well working in an emergency homeless shelter. And let's just say it takes a special person, as it also does to work for a police department. Thanks for joining Chief Helmick and I on this fun and heartwarming conversation about leadership and pursuing your passions. This is Pastor Devlyn Brooks of Churches United on the DMF podcast series, Lead with Light. Remember, we are all called to serve by seeing light, being light, and spreading light. Amen.